your own pressure on your own shoulders, that you feel like you got to do this, like that they're expecting you to do something, you know? And nobody really talks about that part of like being a pro skater.
A handful of people can skateboard to the level that Ben can skateboard. If you go skating with Ben, he'd quite often just sit down and watch, or he'd just be really enthusiastic about what you were doing.
He would always not want to skate in front of people because he's like self-conscious or like worried. It was always like a bit of a battle because he felt out of place.
When the police came to tell me, I looked at him and I said, "What's happened to my brother?" I just thought he was going to say to me, "Ben's overdosed and he's in a coma," or "He's thrown himself off something but he's in hospital." And then, yeah, he started crying and he couldn't get the words out. I was in complete shock.
It's going fine. It's a lovely day. The birds are singing, the sun is shining. What more can you ask for?
Growing up, our house was like a small council flat. There was like 5 of us on top of each other with, you know, not a lot. We got taken to a skate park in Brightlingsea, which was like a tiny like seaside town in Essex where we grew up. And then he saw some skateboarders and he was like, "This is insane."
He would just go down the local park and be really, really good, and that's how people were like, "Who the hell's this random kid that's amazing?" The tricks he was doing when he was 13 was just ridiculous, like he was a whole other level.
Deep down, he was made for skateboarding, and I think skateboarding gave him that chance to escape.
He'd go to every skate park opening or competition, and he would just like skate, and he'd probably just like eat sweets and drink Coke and just like do the maddest shit. People knew then that he was something special.
He went on to go around the country and stuff on skate trips, but he was in school at this time, so he was probably about 13, 14, 15.
Let's see, I met Ben, he was probably about 14 years old. I was out in England on a tour. He was just like this little ripping kid. We happened to ride for the same company. From that moment on, I was like, wow, this kid has like the magic touch. Like he just had that special thing.
Can I have a balloon, please?
From that day, I was like, if you ever come to the States, you know, look me up, come hang out. Kind of in typical Ben form, like he came out to the States and didn't know what he was doing or where he was going. He was writing for Consolidated at the time, and he was sleeping in their warehouse. Didn't really like know any of the dudes or anything, and so he called me and he was just like, "Mate, I'm just in this warehouse, I don't really know anybody." And I was like, "I'll come to San Jose." Ended up just staying at my house, hanging out with everybody. He wasn't on Enjoy, but at that point on, everybody just felt like he was on Enjoy. We basically put him on the team, and that's kind of how all that started.
When did you know you were rolling away? When I stopped going. Oh yeah, man.
It was just like, get on your board, drink, skate, get money constantly, and he was going up and up and up, which was amazing.
I think because he had loads of people around him, obviously all the Enjoy team and the lads there, I think that was really good for him.
He used to make me laugh so much. I used to do this real belly laugh. He'd kind of know who's being funny, but try and keep a straight face, but if I was really laughing, he'd burst out laughing.
We're one trick away from completing this show.
I always used to call him like a Tasmanian devil. So he'd walk in a room and it would be a whirlwind, but he was a real unique person.
That outlaw mentality of like there are no rules to it kind of attracts that kind of personality, you know? And that's what makes it difficult in trying to wrangle those people into like some sort of like box or a ball and like confine them to like some rules of like, now this is a job. Now you gotta do this like this day a week. Now you gotta film this video part. Now you gotta like act this certain way. You're talking to people who got into something because they don't want to be told what to do, you know? So it's a fine line to walk in like what is defined as being a pro skateboarder, you know?
Ben Raemers has a certain naivete about him.
I don't actually know what this is. I don't know if it's made for skating or what it really is.
Ben was naive, and that was like one of the lovely things about him. Like he had that naivety, but what you see with the companies that sponsor stuff is like an exaggerated version.
Whoa!
Look at the amount of cows, mate.
That was kind of like him being introduced to the American market. I think people kind of felt like they could kind of give him shit, like jokingly, because they're like, oh, that's Ben, and Ben's like that. So they're like, there'd be little jokes and little jibes.
I like getting made fun of and shit.
No, we're skating this spot in Buffalo, New York, and Ben was trying to ollie into this bank, and he was asking everyone that was watching to just verbally abuse him.
He'd sometimes be like, oh, everyone's making fun of me, but then he'd also like it when people made fun of him, so it's...
Ben has had anger issues from when we were tiny. The skateboarding, he would channel some of that anger into. He'd like, if he took a slam, if he had a bad day, throwing his skateboard because it was a way of him doing that. But then there were still so many things that he needed to deal with, and skateboarding didn't help with that. Her upbringing was pretty tough. Our mum has battled with addiction her whole life, and our dad left when we were really young. He'd show up every so often, but didn't have any kind of involvement really with us. Not having a dad around really affected Ben massively.
When you try to go to bed and it's dark, he's like, hey Jonathan, you awake?
He couldn't be alone. The minute Ben was on his own, his mind just did overtime, and then all these demons and things and problems, like I say, from my childhood would come back. Ben loved Mum so much, and when her mental health got really bad and it really upset him.
Mum, this one's for you. And $200.
$200.
Smoke. And this one's for Mum, right?
Mum would be proud.
Oh, thanks, man. Some pretty heavy hitters on the front cover, especially that guy right there. He's one of the best. I'm joking. I'm a little bit hungover and it's actually making me feel quite sick. Oh, sick.
When he turned pro, I don't think Ben could handle what came with that.
I was pretty stoked. I'll give that to my mum. She'll be well happy. Oh my God. What the hell?
You're pro.
What the fuck?
It's difficult. Him going pro was wicked, but also just the beginning to an end, I suppose.
Oh, I'm gonna have to get drunk all day again now. I didn't want to, but now it's just gotta be done. Wow.
Ben liked the camaraderie of being a skateboarder, but Ben absolutely hated the spotlight of being a pro skateboarder. I mean, he was the worst dude to do demos with because he would not skate. And I would notice it with poster signings. He would get super awkward and weird.
I think when people would say to Ben, you know, you're so lucky, you've got the best job in the world. And I think him struggling deep down, it was probably the hardest thing for him to hear. And it made him probably go into his shell even more. When it became something he had to do, you know, he's got these underlying issues that he hadn't kind of dealt with, and then couldn't understand his anxiety. He'd go into himself. It didn't become about him, it was about skateboarding. So he associated that with, I hate skateboarding.
Hello, Ben.
Hello? Is that Clara Foster?
What's up, Ben? What have you been up to?
Yeah, I'm back in England and out of board, so I've had bugger all to do.
So he came back from America and was, you know, trying to keep his skateboarding career going, but then his sponsors were in America.
He knew everyone in London and was their friend, you know, like when there's all different cliques and groups, he sort of was friends with absolutely everyone. Like, he needed to be with someone at all times.
Everyone else, like when it's their Saturday, they've worked all week, they're like excited to go skate and do stuff. But for him, every day is a Saturday. So every day is skating and drinking beers.
He had no routine. He'd just text me every day, the word saying with a question mark, and I'd often be like, I've got to work. And then he'd talk about wanting a job, but his job was to skateboard. You can't have a job and then go on a trip for 3 weeks. You're not going to be able to do that.
The last couple trips he wasn't having fun.
I think he probably just wanted routine, where like he would have like, I need to be at my job this time, and then my other time is like my spare time.
Every time I'd see him, I'd come to London to stay with him, and it would be like Ben would wake up in the morning and he'd just be drinking wine, and he'd be like, oh, you know, it's just because I haven't got anything to do today. And it was every single day. I felt awful putting it on him, saying, you're an alcoholic.
Let's go, my son.
He was different in the last few weeks. There's like little telltale signs of like giving stuff away, and like towards the end he was really slim and just like excessively drinking. Even like literally here, when we were here that day and it was like 11, 12, everyone's got beer, but he's like Cherry B, Smirnoff, and then shotgunning beers. And at the time, we're just like, oh, Ben's like having a laugh, but it's like, no, like Ben's hiding stuff, or Ben's like trying to change his mindset. But yeah, at the time, you don't think that's the problem.
He was throwing himself at stuff, picking fights. Ben needed me around, but I was finding it extremely, extremely tough to be around him. And then I'd be annoyed because I'd leave and think, great, that was a weekend and he's ruined it. I didn't realise to the extent of why he was behaving like that. He called me really drunk and was just like, I'm so sorry, Luce, but I can't do this anymore. I love you. It was almost like he was talking about it so openly all the time. You know, you think you're not going to do that. And it wasn't like it was him in a sober state. It was always when he drank, but trying to get him help sober, he'd try and he wouldn't. He tried medication and, you know, most meds, they don't kick in for a few weeks. But he just, yeah, he couldn't stick it out. He just wanted out.
You know, some news that hit us hard, man. A few weeks ago, our buddy Ben Raemers
took his life.
28 years old, man. I couldn't believe it. I don't think anybody could believe it. Happiest kid. Nobody suspected anything was wrong, you know.
It's a lovely day. The birds are singing. The sun is shining. What more can you ask for?
It's something where people say, you know, you couldn't have done any more and it's not your fault, but I felt like I failed, which was really hard.
When he's drunk, he said awful things, but you never thought he'd do that.
And then there's a selfish part of like, I just want Ben here because I like him and he's my friend, you know, and nothing to do with skateboarding or enjoy or anything like that. Like, he was just a good dude.
I was in a state of shock, I think, for ages. And then I moved to London. Ben was supposed to be in the room that I'm in. I then was kind of trying to get used to life here, but I couldn't deal with not having Ben around. I wanted to be with Ben. You know, I lost my brother, but I lost a part of me that every day was checking in on him and me feeling like a mum, and I lost that as well. Someone sent me a video of Ben and I'd had some drinks on my own and I just fell apart. And that was my first night where I was really suicidal. I told my cousin Chess about it, and then I was trying to get on top of how I was feeling, saying I didn't really need help. And she was like, let's go for a walk. And I looked at her and I just burst into tears and I just said, I can't do this anymore, I need help. She booked me a doctor's appointment and it saved my life. So we started the Ben Raemers Foundation to kind of kickstart conversations in skateboarders and create safe spaces for them to talk. When Ben was younger, mental health wasn't really spoken about. It was just Ben watching a video of teens going out skating, slamming, drinking, partying. There wasn't the other side to it. There's always been that stigma attached that men, you know, don't want to talk and can't talk and won't talk. But one thing I've learned is they may just not have had the safe space to do that. So we've been doing suicide awareness training, and that was the first deliverable we kind of spoke about.
The other day I did a suicide awareness course.
Organised by the Ben Raemers Foundation.
It's quite a difficult subject to discuss.
It's super important to kind of have that back-end information, just to be aware of the kind of maybe subtle cues.
I'm much better equipped to know the right questions to ask.
The amazing thing with it is people want to do this, they want to be a part of it. People want to get behind this and want to educate themselves more on it.
Because Ben was such a special person, I feel like people recognised that something like this needed to be done in his name, because if someone like that can suffer so badly, then there is obviously a big issue there.
A massive thanks to you guys for being here today.
So we've had some amazing people do smile films with us and talk about things, normalising mental health.
Like every day was so hard to get through. I was like self-medicating with Propanol to try and slow my heart rate down, hardly sleeping. You know, what's going on? I need to get help. Like, I can't function like this if every day is so difficult to get through. This isn't normal. You'd be surprised how many friends you've got that are there for you and willing to talk to you. And a lot of us through Ben have realised, like, we wish we'd been there for him more, or like understood how to be there for him more.
Skateboarding's full of like highs and lows. It's hard to manage those. I'm so proud of these two for being able to speak so honestly about like a personal struggle in the way that they have.
I don't know, I think it's a mixture of all things and generally feeling understood, and also it's okay to feel shit and to be wobbly. I think learning to see a different side of yourself that's really vulnerable and like weak is just fucking hard.
I love you all and thank you so, so much. You're amazing, all the amazing panel.
For them to open up, you know, so bravely about this, it might just allow someone else to say, Jesus, actually, I've been struggling with that. Someone had messaged us on Instagram, said it's the first time I turned to my friend and said, mate, I've actually been really struggling. And that always stick out to me. Skateboarding's amazing, the love that's in it and how much they look out for each other and how they do open up.
Certainly since Ben passed, it's been talked about a lot, I feel, and I think it's being talked about more.
I think people are doing a lot more checking in on friends and like hugging your friends and telling your friends that you love them and just making sure that they're okay.
It's easy enough saying to someone, you know, call an ambulance or ring your doctors, but it's sometimes impossible to do. I couldn't do it when I was in that place. Just reach out to someone, like anyone. Remember you are so loved. Because when you're in that frame of mind, you don't see that. You know, suicidal thoughts, they are just temporary. Of course they come back, but they won't stay forever. So always reach out. You are loved.